already have superpowers that you can harness to help you move forward to your health and your goals. So if you are watching live, just say hello, let me know where you are in the world. Maybe put live in the chat. If you're watching a replay, just put replay. If you leave a comment, then others will see the video and I'll feel the love. Maybe I didn't get enough attention when I was younger. So you may be asking yourself the question, what is the relevance of this to ME, CFS, fibromyalgia, POTS, long COVID, related conditions? Someone actually did respond to a video I put on TikTok about shifting our state. And she said, what's this got to do with ME? ME is a biological condition, not a psychological one. And my response was, I agree that it's not a psychological issue, i.e. it's not all in your head, but we need to understand some really core concepts about health. So Doris says hi, Tammy says stars. Some people are very wedded, whether they know it or not, to the medical model of health. Very simple synopsis of that is, symptoms are the result of some agent, for example, a virus, or a result of some malfunction. So, for example, if the thyroid's not working, the solution is medication. If someone has high blood pressure, the solution is, any guesses? Dana says hi from Israel. Nice to see you on the call. So, yeah, any guesses? What's the medical model approach to high blood pressure? Pop your answer in the chat. Now, the integrated, Tammy says hi from Mexico. So we've got a truly international audience. So hello, everybody. So from an integrated model perspective, the integrated model looks at a number of factors that affect our health, okay? And it's important to understand that there is research that shows that stress makes it more likely that we get diseases that make us sick. And it also hinders recovery. And there are 3 types of stress. Acute physical stress, for example, being exposed to a virus. Chronic physical stress, for example, having an ongoing health issue. And psychological stress. Okay, so it's important to identify and address the stressors that are keeping your body out of the healing state. And consider also which of those 3 types of stress and what combination of those stressors is relevant to your situation. If I think about why I got sick, there was a combination of acute physical stress. For instance, I did get a virus, but I was already really depleted. And the reason I was depleted and was experiencing chronic physical stress is I had a really super stressful job. And what that made that stressful was my psychology. Okay, so that was a perfect storm for me to get sick. Now, so we talked about this notion of having superpowers. We need to understand that there are kind of 2 operating systems, if you like. We can be operating from what I call operating system fear. And some of us are operating from fear a lot of the time. When I had ME/CFS, and even before I had ME/CFS, I was operating from fear a lot of the time. And when we're in that state, okay, we're in survival mode. Right, the body is not doing important repair functions. And often that part of us that's operating from fear was created when we were young, when we had limited strategies and knowledge of how to make sense of the world. And so we created this part of us, and it's just been doing its best to keep us safe and take care of us. But unfortunately, some of the strategies that we developed, and those strategies have evolved and grown, don't really serve us. So some people like to call this part the lower self, the wounded self, the child self, the fear self. But you can use whatever terminology you like, or you can create your own terminology. So I'd be interested to know, do you relate to what I've just talked about? You know, this operating system of fear. If so, put a yes in the chat. And what would you call that part of you that operates from fear? Would it be the lower self, the wounded self, the child self, the fear self, or something else? So pop your answer in the chat. Just be interested to know. And now there is this other part of us, okay, that operates from trust and love. And in this state, we can thrive. We can grow. We have the potential to cultivate health, energy, and resilience. And some people call this part the higher self, the wise self, the true self, the authentic self, or the whole self. Again, you can use one of those terms or create your own terminology. I'd be interested to know what you choose to call that part of yourself. I've had clients who've come up with very creative names for that part of themselves. And I'd like to ask you the question, which of those two parts of those operating systems do you currently feel most connected to? Is it that fear operating system or that trust operating system? Again, if you like, pop your answer in the chat. So Alan says Mike needs to duck out early, we'll catch replay. No problem, Alan, that's completely fine. Penny says yes, can relate. Wounded self, wise self, fear. Yeah, so you know, people are kind of relating to that, fluctuating between the two. And here's the thing, you know, that's always going to be the case, that you know, there is some fluctuation. Actually, let's just go to the iPad for a moment. Consider if we have got these two parts of us, part that operates from trust, whatever we want to call that, and the part that operates from fear, okay, then, you know, it might be that we move between the two of those, all right? And over time, we might find that we spend more time in one than the other. So often when I'm working with people, they recognize that they've spent a lot of time in this place, okay? And part of the work we're doing is helping them make that shift from fear to trust. Okay? So, and Tammy's saying fear as well. And so I'd like you to consider the question, how did you disconnect from this part? If you recognise that you are operating from fear a lot of the time, and maybe don't feel that you're operating from that trust operating system much of the time, how did that happen? Now, I've talked about that in other videos, but I'll give you just very brief overview, all right? So let's imagine that one of the examples I give is, imagine a child who's trying to be helpful and they're in the kitchen and they pick up the broom, and they're only small, so they're holding the broom quite close to the brush and they can't see what the handle's doing. As they're brushing the floor, the handle hits a vase, knocks the vase onto the floor, and it smashes into many pieces. And the mother runs in, she's upset, she sees the vase is broken and it was given to her by her grandmother, who she had very fond feelings towards, who's no longer with her, and so now she's feeling distressed and upset. The child sees that the mother is upset, and now the child's feeling upset because they feel, oh, I've done something wrong, I'm bad, I've upset my mum. Okay, and so in that moment they experience some separation. If the mother's attuned to the child, then they will notice the child's upset and will soothe the child and say, look, you know, I know you were trying to help. I was just upset because this vase is very special, but it's okay. And the child learns to, or the child calms down as a result of that. And that's their first step to learning self-regulation, because their experience is that I am still lovable even when I make a mistake. I am safe, I am loved. And these are two core needs: to feel safe, to feel loved. And if those kind of experiences are reinforced, that it's okay if you make mistakes, then the child learns self-regulating skills and their mindset develops in a certain way because they have that belief that I'm okay, I'm lovable. Now imagine a second scenario where the mother is upset when she sees that the vase is broken, but she has not got those awareness skills to be attuned to the child. Okay, so now the child is feeling separated, they're not feeling safe, they're not feeling loved, and the mother doesn't have the resources to process their emotions. And so now the child is feeling the pain, which is the biggest pain of separation. And this is the first step to learning dysregulation. And again, if these experiences are reinforced, then they don't learn self-regulating skills and they develop a mindset that actually doesn't support them. So what's happening is they're experiencing a sensation of upset, and what happens is they now go to their mind, okay, and create thoughts and beliefs. So for instance, they might create the belief that I'm not lovable, I'm bad, I'm wrong. When I make mistakes, I'm stupid, and they learn self-criticism. And if they're learning that they're not safe, they're not lovable, they can develop anxiety strategies or avoidance strategies. It's not safe for me to be connected. They can learn to be disorganized. Okay, and the problem is that this causes dis-ease in their body, and it's very difficult to heal that by some of the strategies that we develop, which are strategies designed, they're compensatory strategies designed to chase love and approval. So sometimes people will develop overachiever strategies, perfectionist strategies, people pleaser helper strategies. Let me know if you recognize that in yourself, if you can relate, or whether there are other strategies that you developed. I developed a very strong hedonist tendency. That was my strategy for dealing with discomfort. I was seeking hedonism. Now consider what's the problem with that if you have ME CFS. Penny says can relate. Well, if we develop strategies like being an overachiever, then that, or perfectionist, we may tend to push rather than take care of ourselves. Doris says I can totally relate. Thanks for the feedback. We develop the tendency to ignore our needs. Okay, so these are just some of the strategies that we develop, and they result in unhelpful patterns. So pushing, and then obviously crashing, ignoring our needs, putting others first, caring too much about what other people think. Tammy saying all of the above. Okay, and then we're not connected to our wise self because we're in pain, we're seeking the love and approval, and we can develop that trait of being very self-critical. All right, we're not authentic, we're not okay to express our true self, our true feelings. As I say, we create these beliefs that are not very helpful. I'm not lovable, I'm not okay, I'm not safe. Okay, now we need just to consider that those significant others just didn't have the resources that they needed to have in order to be more skillful, more attuned. Okay, they did the best they could, but obviously the best they could was just not enough for our innocent young self. And that's an important point, is that we were innocent. I posted something about this idea that it's not your fault. Whatever's happened where, others have mistreated you, or if you got sick, or if you haven't yet got well, it's not your fault. Okay? And it's really important to understand and embrace the idea that you are innocent. Okay? Now, so what do we do about that? What do we do if we've got this tendency to live in fear instead of trust? Well, one of the things that we can work on is feeling safe in our bodies. Being able to experience physical sensations, to be able to experience emotions without going to our head and creating thoughts and beliefs. So, for example, how often do people, when they are experiencing symptoms, some sensation in their body, I like the word sensation rather than symptoms because it's just less emotive. How often do people go to their heads and catastrophize? They experience a symptom maybe because they've overdone it, and they're saying things to themselves like, I'm never going to get well, I'm such an idiot, I've overdone it again, blah, blah, blah. Okay? Not helpful. That just results in more feelings of anxiety, which actually just result in more sensations in the body. Okay? And it can result in behaviours. For example, we might develop behaviours to alleviate the pain and help us experience pleasure. Unfortunately, some of those strategies can be unhelpful. So, for example, if someone's default strategy when they feel upset is to comfort eat, then over time that's going to have particular consequences if they're comfort eating unhealthy foods. So I'd like you to consider, what are your unhelpful comfort strategies? Only if you want to pop in the chat, but don't feel that you have to. But it's interesting now, as I say, one of my strong comfort strategies was to want distraction. So I'd want to do activities that made me feel good. I wanted excitement, maybe watching a film that was very stimulating or whatever. However, when my energy was really low when I had CFS, that just resulted in more depletion. So Penny says distracting. So really interested to kind of know what your pattern is. As I say, only if you want to share that. So first thing is to learn strategies so that we can actually feel comfort in our body and feel okay with having a connection to our physical body and our emotions. Now we can start really slow and gentle by just doing somatic practices, can't say the word, and I have made another video where I talk about that, so I won't go into that in too much depth. And when we feel safe in our body and safe to be connected to our body, then we can start to feel safe to experience emotions. Okay? And then I think it's important to connect to our wise self, or whatever you want to call that part of you that has that capacity for wisdom, authenticity, to be feeling, that you're in your true self. And so I'm going to share a little strategy right now. Some of you might be aware of it, called the flip the switch. Now, if you'd like this strategy, if you're watching on Facebook, you can put the word flip in the chat, tag me, so type my name so it comes up, and then I'll get a notification, and I will send you that. If necessary, send me a private message. Okay, if you're watching on YouTube, either comment below or get in touch, and I will send you this exercise. But Right now, I invite you to close your eyes. Obviously, only close your eyes if it's safe to do so. And I'd like you just to imagine that there's a thread at the top of your head, just straightening your posture. So just allow your posture to be comfortable, maybe symmetrical. You might want to uncross your legs. And as you straighten your posture, just take in a slow, deep breath in through your nose, as long as that's comfortable, into your belly and out your nose. And just ensure that the out breath is a little bit longer than the in breath. And as you breathe in and out, quietly, slowly, I'd like you to connect to that best version of yourself. You might give that self, that you, a name, whatever feels right. And just say hi to whatever that you call that part of you. And I'd like you to consider that you've connected to that part many times in your life. That part of you has shown up. Maybe you were faced with a challenging situation that you didn't know how to deal with. In that moment, but something inside, that quiet little voice, just directed you, and you responded in a resourceful way. Might be that you helped out a friend or member of your family who was dealing with a challenge. Or it might have been a situation where you just needed to find a solution for yourself. But I'd suggest to you that you have responded to situations with patience, with a sense of peace, pragmatism, acceptance, calm, compassion, competency, trust, and other qualities. What I'd like you to consider is that as you just connect to that part of you, just put a smile on your face as you continue to breathe in and out with that smile on your face. And when you're doing that, you are flipping the switch, connecting to that best version of you. And you can keep your eyes closed for a little while longer if you like, as I tell you about a process that I call the See It process. And that's an acronym, and the S stands for supervision. I'd like you to consider that you have the capacity for supervision. What I mean by that is that you have the capacity to shift from being unconscious to conscious. You're able to bring awareness to the situation so that you can spot patterns and become the observer. And from the perspective of the observer, you can find solutions. Let me give you an example of that. So if you like, you can bring yourself back. Maybe pop in the chat, how did you find doing that exercise? And I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about, a practical example. So, for example, this is something that I've worked with clients on. So, for example, sometimes clients recognize that their energy is low. Okay. And when the energy is low, perhaps, actually if we had a scale here, 0 to 10, let's say their energy is about 2 out of 10. Their symptoms, let's say, are a 9 out of 10. Okay, or sensations as I call them. And as a result, they generate a lot of stress. If we think of that as an equation, what is going to be the impact of that? Low energy plus sensation in their body plus stress. You know, that might result in less energy. Okay. Oops. Now, if they recognize that pattern, and this is a pattern that often is repeated, so now they've got low energy, they then experience more sensation, the sensations get higher because their energy is low and the body's having to do more work. Again, they experience stress. It's just going to repeat that pattern. There was a time when I had ME/CFS, I was really stressing about the idea that if I kept going the way I was going to end up in hospital. That just caused more stress in my body and actually made it harder for my body to heal. Okay. Now, if they recognize, this is the pattern that I'm running, that when my energy is low and I'm experiencing sensations, I generate lots of stress. Now, as I'm bringing my awareness to that pattern, it is possible that I could reduce the stress response and cultivate more calm. Now, if we do that continually, what impact is that going to have on our energy? Well, actually, our energy is going to improve. Okay? And if we keep working on that, then it's possible that actually the sensations are going to reduce. And again, we're generating less stress and more calm. It's possible that the energy is going to start to build. Does that make sense? So that's just an example. That's one of the things that I work with clients on, is helping them spot their patterns. Because when we spot our patterns, then we've got some knowledge, and knowledge is power. Okay? And then we need to look at how we break those patterns. And one of the strategies, again, that I teach people, which is how to uninstall those limiting beliefs that I'm not lovable, I'm not good enough, I'm not okay, I'm not safe. Okay? So that we can cultivate that wise self operating from that place of trust more and more. And here's an interesting thing that can happen. When we experience this kind of separation between the part of us that operates from fear and the part of us that operates from trust, what can happen is that this part of us that operates from trust can actually shrink, and the part of us that operates from fear can kind of take over. All right? However, when we work on making those shifts that we've talked about, learning to feel safe in our body, and learning to navigate the sensations we're experiencing in more resourceful ways, then a really interesting thing can happen. So first thing is that this fear part becomes smaller, and the trust, the part of us that operates from trust and self-love, gets bigger, and that part can start to integrate and take care of that fear part of us. Okay, it becomes integrated. So for example, I was talking to some clients about this today, that it doesn't mean, for instance, that you'll never have another fear-based thought, but when you're operating from trust, that part of you can take part of that wounded part, and so they're working, those two parts are working together. So that's just a very brief overview. Okay, I want you to consider how operating from your, whatever you want to call it, wise self, true self, authentic self, whole self, okay, how will that impact your healing when, instead of running those patterns, overachiever, perfectionist, people pleaser, you're prioritizing yourself, you're making decisions from that place of trust, of I am enough, I am good enough. Instead of running those patterns of comfort strategies that you recognize don't serve you, you're cultivating strategies that are more useful. So for example, you know, if when I feel upset or frustrated, instead of going for distraction, I tune in, maybe I do the flip the switch exercise, then I'm calming my physiology. I did that exercise one time and I fell asleep for an hour and a half, and I was surprised, I was shocked that actually that my body was that tired. All right, so pop in the chat, what are your thoughts about how operating from that higher self, wise self, what difference that's going to make to your healing? If you've got any thoughts about that, pop it in the chat. And just to say that in about a month or so, I'm going to be running the Building Resilience training. There are options for doing it as an online training. There are going to be options to join the group program, and there are options to do the training one-to-one. And I'm going to be starting a new program in March, so if you're interested, get in touch. If you'd like to know more, if you've got more questions, I can send you a link to a page where you can check out what the course is about. So if you've got any questions, pop them in the chat now. If not, we'll pause there. Penny says, will make a huge difference to operate from wise self, like the idea of making decisions from a place of trust. Yeah, so that is something that we can cultivate. And I speak as someone who used to be very good at operating from fear. And when I started doing all this work, learning brain training techniques to begin with, I did say to myself, oh my goodness, I'm pretty neurotic. I've got a lot of work to do. Happily, I'd say that I'm less neurotic now, operate more from trust. So, Penny says, thank you very much. You are welcome. So thanks everybody. If you've got any questions, get in touch. Keep working on yourself. Tammy says, this is very helpful. You are welcome, Tammy. Glad you found it helpful. If you have found it helpful, do share it. Do tag just one friend or pop it in a group. Share your reflections. Dana says thank you. And Flip, I will send you the link. But for now, I'll say thanks for watching. Wishing you great health. Keep up the great work. Bye for now.